Hey everyone, Commander Josh Hawkins here, and at the time of sending you this broadcast, this is the view from my cockpit. The spectacular pinks and blues you see ahead are the leftover remains of a cosmic cataclysm that occurred thousands of years ago as a massive star, many times the mass of our Sun, exploded in one of the most violent events in the universe, a supernova, leaving behind a neutron star at the center of this stunningly beautiful supernova remnant. It's hard to keep to the course I had set towards the core when I find something as magnificent as this. Supernova remnants and planetary nebula are so few and far in between that I've really come to appreciate them as the gems of the galaxy, hidden away amidst millions of stars, just waiting to be found by an intrepid explorer with sharp eyes. I've only been lucky enough to find 2 previously undiscovered nebula such as this throughout my entire journey, despite many tens of thousands of light years traveled. So it was hard to resist taking the long detour to fly here, even though my return route was supposed to take me through the core, and unfortunately, this one had already been discovered. Welcome to Exploring the Milky Way Galaxy, Part 18. No matter where you are in the galaxy, when you look up into the night sky, you'll be greeted by the glimmer of thousands of stars twinkling brightly against the black backdrop of the cosmic void. Come back the next night, and you'll see the very same stars twinkling away, as if they were a permanent fixture in the heavens. But even though it's very unlikely that our nightly view of the stars will ever change during our lifetime, the stars themselves don't shine forever. Just like us, stars are born, they mature, grow older, and eventually they die. How long they live depends on how massive they are. The most common stars in the galaxy are red dwarf stars. These cool, relatively small stars burn up their nuclear fuel very slowly and live the longest. In fact, they live so long that as far as we know, there are no red dwarf stars in the universe that are even close to the end of their lives. So we don't really know what happens to them when they die. Stars around the size of our own Sun, however, burn up their fuel much faster, and when they can no longer fuse hydrogen into helium, they go through a period of instability where they can begin to throw off their outer shells to form what we call a planetary nebula. But don't be fooled by the name. Planetary nebula don't give birth to planets. The term planetary nebula is actually a misnomer and was coined by William Herschel in the 1780s. Herschel had recently discovered the planet Uranus, which had a blue-green tint, and he thought these objects resembled the gas giant. So the term became popularly adopted and has never been changed. Stars much more massive than our Sun don't produce planetary nebula, nor do they die quietly. As these massive stars run out of hydrogen and helium, they continue the fusion process with carbon fusing into neon, then oxygen, silicon, and finally iron. But once it reaches iron, even the heaviest stars can't keep going, and the results are catastrophic. The fusion process stops, and suddenly, there's nothing pushing back against the force of the star's own gravity. The outer layers of the stars collapse inwards at almost the speed of light and smash into the iron core, bouncing off at incredible speeds in an event we call a supernova, one of the largest explosions in the universe. The star's core may survive as a neutron star or a black hole, but the rest of it rushes into space as swiftly expanding debris behind a powerful shockwave. In our own galaxy, this usually happens only a few times each century, and when it does, the results are spectacular. The enormous amount of energy released from the explosion sends debris flying away from the supernova that plow through their surroundings at incredible speeds of up to 600,000 kilometers an hour, creating a shock front. This shock heats the gas to millions of degrees, and it's the subsequent cooling of this material that creates the brilliantly colored glow we see here. The supernova remnant continues to expand and glow, gradually decelerating as it sweeps up interstellar gas and dust. Yet even thousands of years later, its imprint on the galaxy remains impressive as a special kind of diffuse nebula is formed by the expanding shell of gas that we call a supernova remnant. As the expanding shell eventually mixes with other materials in the Milky Way, it becomes the raw material for the next generation of stars, planets, and even life itself. Studying and understanding supernova remnants is extremely important for understanding the history of our Milky Way galaxy, since these explosions are more or less responsible for creating all of the elements in our universe that are heavier than iron. The copper, mercury, gold, iodine, and lead that we see on our habitable worlds today were forged in these violent explosions billions of years ago. But heavy elements aren't the only things that are produced by a supernova. And with all this beauty, sometimes it's easy to forget that at the center of all of it is a beast. And a very bizarre beast at that. This supernova remnant is home to one of the strangest and most extreme objects in the universe, a neutron star. During the collapse of a massive star above 1.4 times the mass of our Sun, the incredible pressures at the core smash protons, electrons, and other subatomic particles together until they merge, turning essentially all of them into neutrons. And when the core collapses to about 20 kilometers in diameter, it's essentially a giant ball of neutrons with some protons and electrons, as well as a crust of highly condensed normal matter about 1.5 kilometers thick. These incredibly dense balls of quantum nastiness are composed almost entirely of neutrons whose properties are almost as bizarre as things can possibly get in the universe. These neutron stars have a mass of more than that of the entire Sun, only compressed into a sphere of about 20 kilometers across. Let's take a look at our own Sun for a moment and see if we can make sense of this. The Sun has a mass of over 300,000 times that of the Earth and weighs about 2 nonillion kilograms. That's 2 with 30 zeros after it. Now, imagine all that mass compressed into something only about the size of a small city. This makes neutron stars one of the densest objects in the universe. So dense, in fact, that a single cubic centimeter of neutronium, the stuff that neutron stars are made of, has a mass of about 400 million tons. How heavy is that? Well, let's try to put this into perspective, shall we? In a previous broadcast, I used the example of one of the largest dump trucks on Earth during the 21st century, the Caterpillar 797F. This behemoth truck weighed in at a whopping 623,000 kilograms, or roughly 687 tons. Now, try to imagine taking 582,000 of these dump trucks and crushing them all down until they all fit into something about the size of this sugar cube. That's neutronium. An object this dense has an incredible amount of gravity, about 100 billion times stronger than the surface gravity of the Earth, not to mention a surface temperature of about 1,000,000 degrees Kelvin that would give you a heck of a sunburn if you got too close. And by sunburn, I mean you'd be incinerated, like instantly. All of which makes it very difficult to study neutron stars up close. Oh, and did I mention the X-rays? Well, never mind. So, let's recap. If you went to visit a neutron star, you'd be irradiated, incinerated, and squashed flat into a pancake only a few atoms thick. But don't let all of this discourage you. Neutron stars can still be very profitable to the intrepid explorer who's looking to make a few credits on his journey. Just don't try to land on one. Well, that's all the science I have to share with you today. I gotta say, it's nice being able to get back to what I had originally set out to do when I first left the bubble. My leg has been healing rather nicely, and fortunately I was able to make use of some of the leftover medical gear that was transferred to me during my encounter with Bowen and Julian. I know I probably shouldn't be messing around with this data core too much, but I've been running some tests and can't find any trace of Evil Andra's personality matrix in the mess of code that remains functional. Turgeon and his Andra were right, and it seems that by resetting the data core during the diagnostic sequence, the program began a recursive feedback loop that desynchronized the clock sync of the two cores, effectively disabling and destroying the primary core while leaving the secondary core intact. Since the system as a whole is analogous to the nervous system of a living being, I suppose you could say that Evil Andra was lobotomized. The second data core is still processing normally, but only in its most basic form, so it's possible that with a little tinkering, I may be able to salvage some of its functionality and maybe even tie it back into my sensors. I gotta say, it sure was nice being able to find stellar objects that quickly, and the way this thing is able to interface and communicate with my computer, well, let's just say it's almost impossible to resist testing it out. But don't worry, I'm taking precautions, and I have Turgeon's signal set up on an independent, redundant system ready to fire off if Evil Andra pokes her nasty head up. In the meanwhile, I've once again set course for home, and I'll just keep doing things the old-fashioned way until I can get this working the way I hope it will. I've still got another 28,000 light years to go, but they say the trip home always feels faster. Guess we'll have to wait and see about that. For now, this is Commander Josh Hawkins, signing off.
What the hell?
Andra, are you receiving me?
Affirmative, Commander.
Retract the SRV. I'm bleeding out here. I need to get to the med bay.
I am sorry, Commander, but I cannot give you access to the ship.
I don't understand, Andra. Open the hangar bay doors.
I just needed my day to cool back. Once you...